Yes, welcome along again to another episode of the West Cork League podcast with me, your host, Ger McCarthy. You can follow me on Twitter at Ger McCarthy74. Another week of high-scoring games in the Premier HighSpecCars.com Premier Division and the O'Brien Water Services Championship, and as well as that, the beginnings of the Under-19 League, which has just started recently. That's up and running, and we'll also be having a quick chat a little later on about the Women's 7-a-side League, which is starting up again next weekend, a whole new season of that in the West Cork League. A lot happening, and to help me get through all of that and to guide me through all of that, I'm delighted to welcome co-manager of Drina Rangers, Don Hurley. Don, how are you?
Hi, Ger. How are things?
Thanks very much for joining us. Yourself and Declan, your co-manager at Drina, have been a topic of conversation in recent weeks on the podcast. A certain Clontown manager mentioned yourselves as the Sean Connery and Kevin Costner of the sideline. I said I'd give you a quick chance to comment on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one of us will be Sean Connery and which one of us will be Kevin Costner. But anyway, we'll leave Mr. Leahy to his imagination, I suppose.
We will. It's a vivid imagination.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we get into the results and the what's coming up, obviously we need to talk about Drina Rangers and the fact that you're sitting joint top of the Premier HighSpecCars.com Premier Division, having played 5 games, still undefeated. Fair to say, Don, that you didn't get off to the best of starts, but you're happy enough to be where you are right now?
Oh God, yeah, we'd be very happy to be where we are now. We didn't play well the first day against Doris at all, and we got an injury time goal. You were there, Ger, actually, weren't you?
Yeah.
We got an injury time goal to get a result. But since that, we've picked up a bit. We've had 2 very big away wins, really. 2 very tough places to go, Tor and Ballyhob. We won 2-1 both of those games, and we had 2 good home wins against Bunratty and Clonakilty Town as well. So, yeah, happy enough. I suppose a bit disappointed with the 3 weeks off, or the 2 Sundays off. We lost a bit of momentum, but that was circumstances outside our control and the West Cork League's control and things like that. But we're back next Sunday against Norris, and just won't take every game as it comes and see where it takes us. There's a long season there. We've only 5 games played. Some teams have up to 7 games played, but you have 7 or 8. We have 9 games left, and some teams the man may have 12 games left. So there's a long way to go yet, and it's early on in the year. We're still only in October.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I asked the 2 previous managers that were on, John Buckley of the Manway Town and John Lee with Clonakilty Town, just your assessment of the quality of this year's Premier Division, because I've been covering it quite a long time and you've been involved longer. But this last year and this year, probably the last 2 or 3 years, the standard, in my opinion, has gone up. Would you agree? Yeah,
the standard's very high at the moment. I mean, now I know Bunratty have had it tough this year because of with the GA and everything like that, and Dan McSweeney is building a very young team. But if you look at the other 7 sides in the league at the moment, anyone could beat anybody on any day, I think. And I'm looking at it there, and I mean, at the moment, you think about someone of those 7 sides is going to end up in a playoff to be relegated down to Division 1, and perhaps Bunratty could make it back yet. It's early in the season, and they've only 5 games played as well. But I mean, you're going to have 2 sides from that division going to one going down and one going to have to face into a playoff, which is nerve-wracking, and it's pretty much impossible to call who would be in that playoff at this stage. And it's very tight. All the games are very tight. I mean, you have the odd exceptional results, but in most cases there's very little between the teams and games,
You've not lost yet. You're the last remaining undefeated team in West Cork in the league, in league circles. I know you've only played 5 times, as you alluded to there, but I've noticed this year with you from watching a couple of times. Up front, you're the same as ever. Barry O'Driscoll, you've the usual suspects, and you're playing very well. You've Jago, you've Rob Regan in the midfield, but you just seem that bit more defensively solid. Now, Dunmanway have only conceded 3 goals in the Premier Division, but they've only played twice. You've only conceded 4 goals in 5 games. That is really good going at this level, Don.
Yeah, well, I suppose our 2 centre halves are there a long time now, and JJ Collins and Barry O'Driscoll, and they're excellent. And they don't ever miss a game, so that's fantastic for us. I suppose it's more all over the team really that we haven't conceded goals this year. Robert Oldham, even though he's I suppose not the youngest goalkeeper in the world, he's done very well all year. We've only conceded 4 goals in 5 games. But you have to be like that, and you have to rule out conceding goals if you're going to win leagues or win games. it's the team. Often it's not the team who scores the most goals; it's the team who concedes the least comes on to win it at the end of the year. So, so far we've been lucky that way, and hopefully that will continue. But there's a lot of work involved in that, and I suppose we have two young fullbacks who have been very impressive as well, and everybody else tracks back and does their job as well. So that's really important, you know. I suppose our biggest thing this year really is that we played Ballyhob 3 weeks ago, and we had 19 players. We haven't had a squad like that for many a year, and every single one of them could play. So that's a huge benefit for us this year, you know.
Can I ask you how much the hurt of losing out on last year is driving on this year?
Well, I suppose in reality we weren't good enough last year. We only won 7 league games out of 16. Yeah. We drew 9, so we didn't lose, but we only won 7 league games. So we were the third best team in the league. Ballyhob and Dillon finished ahead of us. The league table doesn't lie. I suppose in the end of the day, we were probably what was hurtful was the fact that we could have won our last league game to win the league. We could have won the one before that against Ballyhob as well, and we lost the Parkway final and we lost the Beamish Cup final. So it was just a total reverse on the previous season. Hurt drives you on, but it's not going to win you anything. You have to still be good, and you have to do your job correctly in order to win something, you know. So that only carries you so far. You have to win each game every Sunday, and that's what we'll be looking to do, you know.
Very good. And we talked about the quality of this year's Premier Division, and we put out on Twitter earlier on just about the quality of players, and we asked who any of the competing clubs, who the best player that they've come up against so far this year. Funnily enough, Clonakilty Town were first to respond, and they mentioned that Mike Hobb yesterday, as he was class. Now, Mike Hobb, of course, is the PRO, or is he? Yes, he is. He's Mike Helen. Just double checking here. He's obviously
very good for a lot of years.
Yes, he's been very good. So that was nice at Clontown. Spartak Mosgrove mentioned the fact that Mizen's goalkeeper, the day we played them, he kept them in. It kept their second team to 2 goals, and it could have been 7 or 8. So just a kind of a sprinkling there of the kind of players that are playing. But from your own point of view and Declan's point of view, with Drina, Don, and this is just a final question before we go into the results section. Can you pinpoint one player that stood out for you so far?
We were thinking about this. I actually rang Declan earlier because I was saying you were going to ask me this question, and you know what? We decided on Shane McSweeney from Doris. The very first year we played them, he was excellent up front. He kept moving all the time, and he was a threat all day long. Himself and the other guy up front with him, I think he's Gavin Johnson. They were a constant threat throughout the game. Their movement was excellent. So we probably hadn't played Doris other than the Parkway final. We wouldn't have played Doris that often in the last few years. So we were very impressed with them on the day, and we have to go and play them again next Sunday. So that'll be a tough one again.
Very good indeed. Thanks for that. Now, let's get into some of the results in action from last weekend. On Sunday, October the 20th, the results from the Premier HighSpecCars.com Premier Division. Bunratty United 1, Doris 2, Toher Celtic 2, Loyer Rovers 3, and Clonakilty Town 3, Ballyhob 1. That last game, the Clonakilty Town Ballyhob one, had significance at the top of the table because Clonakilty Town, because of that result, drew level alongside yourselves, although they've got 2 more games extra played. A big win for Clontown, Don.
Yeah, huge win for Clontown. They had lost their 2 previous games against us and then against Doris. So it was very important for Clonakilty to get back on their winning run. Goals, Alan Ward, Chris Collins and Jonathan Leahy again scoring their goals. I'd say probably a tough weekend for Ballyhob. They had a big wedding on Saturday, and Gabriel's reached the county final as well on Saturday, I suppose. So they might have been at their best, but having said that doesn't take away in any way from Clontown. Clontown are improving. They're going to be a very good side, but to be fair to Johnny Leahy and all the rest of the lads involved, Jonathan Leahy, and it's going to take them a bit of time to put 2 teams who weren't playing together, to put all those players in to play together. They started really well, but it's going to take a bit of time for them to improve, and they're going to be good after. They're going to be good, and maybe this season might be a season too early for them. I don't know. They're joint top of the table, but certainly in years to come, I imagine Clonakilty Town will be right up at the top of the table, you know.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't rule Ballyhob out of anything yet. They've a couple of defeats and things like that. Ballyhob are a very good side. Clonakilty were 3-0 up and Ballyhob kept going, and I think some of the defending from Clonakilty was excellent towards the end of the game. The likes of Ian Crowley and Finbar Butler, I think, were excellent. And Ballyhob scored towards the end, but it was too late to make a difference.
Yeah, it's a significant victory, and considering Ballyhob had a lot of other things happening that weekend, I think, as you said, Sean Minhan replying for them, you know that they're going to bounce back. Another result, and an important one, the team you're facing this weekend, Doris, travelling to Bunratty and getting a very important win because it keeps them in joint second place alongside Ballyhob on 10 points.
Yeah, good win for Doris. Bunratty have been struggling to get results. One of their most seasoned players, Colin Cleary, scored again this weekend, and he seems to be their main goal scorer so far this season. Peter Thornton and Jason O'Sullivan for Doris. It's a good win away from home. Any win in the Premier League that you get away from home, even if a team isn't at full strength, is a great win. And Doris have started really well. They've 10 points. For a promoted team, that's excellent. They've 10 points from their first 7 games, going well. And credit to their manager Tig and everything like that. They've really started well in their league. I was really impressed with them the day they played us.
Yes, they play a nice brand of football like yourselves, and that was a very, very good game, and it's an important win because it keeps them in the top half of the table. One result, though, that did catch my eye, and I presume yours as well, Lyre Rovers travelling to Toher and winning 3-2. Now, the fact that Lyre are only on 7 points after 6 games and Toher are only on 6, I think if ever you wanted to underline just the quality of the Premier Division this season, two sides that in any other league would be challenging for honours, I would imagine. A very big result for Lyre because they're getting some of their players back, and a hat-trick from a young player that's come up through the ranks.
Absolutely. A hat-trick for James Lynham. I'd say he's probably still under 19. Mm-hmm. He's probably still playing under 19, but he's a super player. Great result for Lyre. It would be one that I wouldn't have picked myself because you'd always put Tours out to win at home because they're really good at Drumley now all the time, and it's very hard to win for any team to go to Tour and win. So it's great credit to Lyre to go there and win. And David Moss scored again for Tour. I think he scored 2 last week, and Gareth Crowley scored as well last week. So slight surprise with that. But then Lyre was second 2 years ago. Underrated, I think. At times they just, I suppose, suffered a little bit at the start of the year with hurling and football, and a lot of players missing and things like that. But I mean, it's very hard to call. They're on 7 and Lyre on 7, Tour on 6 at the moment. Dunmanway below them with a lot of games in hand. It's very hard to see who's going to finish down second last or anywhere near second last in that division. You couldn't imagine either Lyre or Tour being in that position anyway. So great result for Lyre.
Yeah, one of the results of the weekend, and those 3 results, what they mean is at the top of the Premier HighSpecCars.com Premier Division, Drina Rangers and Clonakilty Town are level on 13 points apiece, although Drina have 2 games in hand. In joint second place, Ballyhob have 10, as have Lyre. And then in mid-table, Lyre Rovers now up to 5th on 7 points following that victory over Toher Celtic, who are a point behind on 6. And Dunmanway Town, who we'll talk about a little bit later on, still only 2 games played on 3 points. And Bunratty still awaiting their first win of the season, their first points of the season. But a young team, as we said, in Dan McSweeney. Better things lying ahead, hopefully, in the second half of the season for them. Time to move into the O'BrienWaterServices.com Championship. And this is fast becoming my favourite part of the every weekly podcast because, as Don will explain, we've had another goal fest this past weekend. Let's just do a quick recap of the scores first, and we'll pick out each of the games then. So from last Sunday, October the 20th, the O'Brien Water Services Championship, Baltimore 4, Salan 2, Kilbrittain Rovers 2, Drina Rangers B 0, Dunmanway Town B 6, Riverside Athletic 6, that's 6-6, just in case anyone's mistaken, Mizzen AFC 2, Skibbereen 0, Castleac 2, Castletown Celtic 3, and Spartak Musgrove 8, Ulta Celtic 1. I'm going to pick out just to start with because it probably is a significant result, but also because it's a bonkers scoreline. Dunmanway Town B holding Riverside Athletic to a 6-all draw. That's only Riverside's second draw this season, but the point is enough to keep them top of the table. But there's certainly no problem scoring goals, Don, with this Riverside team, but conceding now may well be a problem.
Yeah, I think for both sides they seem to have no problem scoring. I was asking a few of the lads in school about this today. So from what I heard anyway, Dunmanway took a 3-0 lead. Riverside came back and went 5-3 up. Dunmanway then got 3 more goals to go 6-5 up, and Riverside came back to equalise at 6-all. So highly exciting stuff, I'd say. And again, Arno just scored 3 again for Riverside. Riverside have no problem scoring goals, as you say. They have 28 goals in their 8 games. They're the leading scorers in the division. But I suppose their biggest problem at the moment for Riverside and going forward in the rest of the year, it could be a problem for them in that They have 21 goals conceded, whereas Spartak, who are in second, have only 9 goals conceded. So it's a huge difference for them. But they're a really good side. I suppose, again, Riverside had been missing for a year or two from the West Cork League. So it's probably going to take them a while to develop. And they seem to have no problem scoring goals. And Aaron scores a couple of goals nearly every week. So it's super for to have Ballineen, or to have Riverside, a team from Ballineen Menasqueen, back in the league, because there's always good players there, and it's great to have them back. Their other goals were scored by Billy O'Brien, Jake Draper, and David Curtis. Demanway Town B seem to have a very young side. Again, another team that scored lots and lots of goals. I think they had a 5 all earlier on this year as well against Milan, hasn't they? Dara Collins told me today he scored a cracker. Ian Collins, David Ring, and Jack O'Connor got 2. So exciting stuff, and it must have been a thrilling game to watch. Along with that, but they weren't the highest scorers in the division at all afterwards.
No,
they scored 8.
They weren't. And talk about a statement of intent. I mean, if Spartak, who I assume have most of their players back, if not all of them are back at this stage. You know, Ulta are not a bad team at all, despite their lowly league position. But if you're putting 8 goals past anyone, it moves them within a point of the leaders, and it solidifies them, I think, as probably the favourites now to definitely challenge for the title, if not win it out.
Yeah, I think they were the favourites from the start. They were unlucky to go down last year, and when they have their full team out, they're very hard to beat, really hard to beat. 7 different scorers, that's a big thing. To have 7 different people score goals for you. And as you said, Ulta aren't a bad team at all. I mean, Ulta hadn't conceded that many goals in games up to this, and they always have a team out, and they're always organised. And for Spartak to put that much of a score beyond them shows just where Spartak are and are going to be for the rest of the year. I mean, I'd say no, for a point of view of anyone in the Premier Division. One of the worst draws you could get in the Beavers Cup in a few months' time is to get Spartak. I think they will. It's just hard to see anyone else finish ahead of them in the Division 1 league in the Championship. No, obviously Riverside are ahead, and Riverside have been going very well, and Kilbrittain are just behind them. But I think with the new Stone players back and everything like that, you'd expect Spartak to drive on from here, really, wouldn't you?
Yes, you would. And speaking of Kilbrittain, they're up into third now. They're still only 2 points behind Riverside, the leaders, following a 2-0 win over your second team, Drina Rangers B.
Yeah, I was talking to a couple of the Drina Rangers B lads yesterday. Drina B have huge numbers again. They carried 17 lads down to Kilbrittain, which was great. But their problem is they're not getting enough goals. They're not scoring enough goals at all. Joe Harrington and Jerry Cochran again, another man that scores, and man, I suppose, nearly responsible for the setting up of Kilbrittain with a few others, scoring again this week. Kilbrittain are a strong team, going well. 5 wins in 7 games, they're right up there, and they'll certainly be challenging to get into the top 2, and if not, into the places 3 and 4 to get into the playoffs. So you'd expect Kilbrittain to, along with Riverside and Spartak, you'd expect them to be in the top 6.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be a big battle for those top 6 places, as you said. Now, a team that we'd spoken about in previous podcasts that were on a fantastic run were Celan, but they came a cropper away to a team we haven't really spoken much about, but are now creeping up the middle of the table, and that's the Crabs. Baltimore winning 4-2. Big result for them. Yeah,
big result for Baltimore. 2 weeks in a row, Celan had to travel down to Baltimore Road. I see Trevor Healy scored again for them. He's another player that seems to score every week, but Dan McEwan, Sean O'Donovan, Paddy Bohan, Brian Leonard for Baltimore. Baltimore are good, they're organised, they're a seasoned team now, they've been going for a long time. And again, you'd be looking at the moment, you'd kind of be thinking Baltimore, along with Celan and Mizzen, they would probably be the other 3 teams that you'd think would get into the top 6, but there's a lot to play for yet. But certainly Baltimore up to 6th place now, so you'd be kind of thinking that they'd push on from here.
They certainly have the team capable of doing it if everyone's available to them. So, it's getting very crowded at the top of that table, as you said. And Baltimore, certainly. Another good footballing team, I'm sure you would agree, having seen them and played against them last year, are Mizzen. And they're anyone that's come on the podcast is a big fan of the way they play their football. A good win for them at home to Skibbereen, 2-0.
Yeah, I suppose we didn't play Mizzen last year. We played them the year before in a Parkway Cup final. They were unreal. We were very lucky to win. They're really good, really well organised side, and good pitch over in Mizzen. They play good football. I suppose Skibbereen a very young team at the moment, but it's a good result again for Mizzen. Patrick Scully again scoring 2 goals for them. they're up to fifth. They have a couple of games in hand on a couple of the teams above them. Mizzen will be right in there, I would think, and you could well see Mizzen certainly in the top six, or possibly even in one of the playoff, or even in the promotion places at the end of the year. I certainly wouldn't rule them out.
No, and especially with the brand of football that they play, they're going to be a match for anybody in that division. The final game that we need to talk about are two teams unfortunately struggling at the wrong end, but a big win for Castletown Celtic, their first of the season, and more disappointment for a Castleac team losing out by the odd goal in 5-3-2 at home to Castletown Celtic.
Yeah, nothing seems to be breaking for Castleac. I mean, they went to extra time with Wilton the week before in the Munster Junior Cup. Here again, they scored. They're beaten on going the wrong end of a 3-2 scoreline. Chris O'Donoghue scored again for them in Paolo Driscoll. But it's great to get for Castletown to get their first win. Their results had been improving as well recently. They had gone into Mizzen and got a result, and they drew with Riverside last week. So 2 for Paul Dean and 1 for Josh Barry. Nice to see Castletown getting off the mark with a win, with their first win, and pushing up the table. Both sides will probably end up, at this stage, it looks like both of those sides will end up in the bottom 6, which will also be very competitive for the Division 2 league title later on in the year. That's going to be very competitive. There's not going to be much between those teams down there either, when that is set up at the end of the year, or at the end of whenever it happens, maybe in December or so.
Yeah, you're right there, because whatever about the top half, the bottom half will be extremely hard to call, and it gives teams as well a second chance. Maybe things haven't gone well in the first half of the season, but an opportunity to go for a trophy, the Division 2 trophy, as you said, once that split occurs. Before we move...
Absolutely.
Sorry, I was just going to say, before we move on, just have a quick check of the O'BrienWaterServices.com Championship League table. Riverside Athletic are back up on top, having played 8 games on 17 points. With a game in hand directly behind them, Spartak Mossgrove on 16 after their big win. Kilbrittain Rovers up into third on 15 points. And then a clutch of clubs separated by 4 points. Salan, Mizzen and Baltimore round off the top 6. In the bottom half of the table, Dunmanway Town B have 9 points. Drina Rangers B have 8. And then you've Skibbereen, Castletown, Ulta and Castleac bringing up the rear. But lots to play for there. Before we move on to the Under-19 League, there was one other major... result from last week involving a West Cork League club, and it's your big rivals Dunmanway Town. A fantastic win for them in the third round of the FAI Junior Cup.
Yeah, super win. 5-1 at home against Everton. Brilliant win. I mean, when Dunmanway get going and when their forwards get going, Cathal Daly scored 3, Cathal superstar. Mark Buckley got 2. Like they have serious forwards. If you add in the likes of Rhys Coakley and Barry O'Donovan, they've got serious firepower going forward. It's a great win, and moves them on to the third round to the round 4 of the FAI Junior Cup. I said you'd be hoping at that stage that probably the teams will get a bit strong. You'd be hoping for a home draw for them, and I imagine that draw, the FAI Junior Cup, that draw will be made soon. But great win for Dunmanway. I'd say they are going to be. I know they've only 2 points or 3 points from 2 league games, but they're still a big threat to everybody in the West Cork League Premier Division as the season goes on. So well done, good win.
Yeah, big win for them and for John Buckley and his team. And as you said, into the fourth round of the FAI Junior Cup, which is a serious achievement. One other league which has been moving in the last couple of weeks is the West Cork League's Under-19 League, and there was 3 games played last weekend. Castleac lost 6-4 at home to Bunratty United in a high-scoring game in Laura. Drina Rangers defeated Bay Rovers 3-0 at Cannon Crawley Park, and Toher Celtic defeated Riverside Athletic 2-1, a game that I was lucky enough to cover for the Southern Star, and you can read a match report and see some photographs from that in Thursday's edition. And what those results mean, even though it's very early days in the league: Drina, Dunmanway and Bunratty all on 3 points, as are Artfield and Toher Celtic. Lyre Rovers, Bay Rovers, Castleac and Riverside yet to get off the mark. And just briefly on that, Don, an Under-19 league and a successful Under-19 league is very important for the future of the West Cork League.
Absolutely. Hugely important. And I think it's a great thing that we're trying it out. We've had the Under-18 league for many a year, and it's great to try out the Under-19 league, and we may end up putting a 17 league in the new year as well, maybe a shorter version or something like that, depending on interest, when the current West Cork Schoolboys Under-16 finishes. But in terms of the Under-19 league, it's going to be very competitive. Just looking at last year's finishing up, because I suppose they're the same players in many ways. Tor won the league, Lyre won the cup, so they're probably the 2 strongest teams. They met in the league final and they met in the cup final, so I think they would probably be the 2 strongest teams. Dunmanway were very close to that as well, but it's very hard to judge it early on. It's very early on in the season. Bunratty going over to Bandon scoring 6 goals is a good sign for them. I would imagine. And I'd say Danny McQueen in charge of Drina was well happy with a 3-0 win first day out as well,
Yes, lots to look forward to in that league, as you said, and important that it goes well because it's the lifeblood for the junior league and for players for progressing onto that. Looking ahead next, let's just do a quick run through of those under-19 West Cork League fixtures for Saturday the 26th of October. Bay Rovers will have home advantage for the visit of Loyer Rovers at 2 o'clock in Cailkill. In fact, all these games are 2 o'clock. Drina Rangers welcome Castleac to Canon Crawley Park. Dunmanway Town host Bunratty United in Mona. And Riverside Athletic will look to bounce back from that early defeat against Artfield. I would imagine that Dunmanway Town Bunratty game will be quite interesting, Don. And as you alluded to earlier on, Artfield as well are very strong this year, and Loyer Rovers probably will have a good team as well.
Yeah, I just small fancy for Loyer and Tor would be the two that would stand out for me, but Dunmanway and Bunratty would be the next two, I'd say. And it would be very interesting to see how Dunmanway beat Riverside early on. So Dunmanway, we'd expect them probably to beat Bunratty at home, even though Bunratty went to Bandon and won last week. But I'd say very competitive, very early days. It's hard to judge yet, but hopefully it'll be a very tight league and there'll be some really good games.
Yep, that's what everybody wants. On Sunday, 27th of October, 4 games down for decision in the Premier High-Spec Cars.com Premier League. Ballyhob welcome Dunmanway Town to Rathravan. Loyer Rovers take on Clonakilty Town, a local derby in Loyer. Toher Celtic welcome Bunratty United. And Durras take on Drina Rangers at 2:30. Those other 3 games are 11 o'clock kickoffs. Drina and Durras's game in Durras is at 2:30. Let's talk about that one, because your earlier match earlier in the season was a humdinger, done, and I expect you're probably expecting more or less the same again.
Yeah, I think we scored an injury time. We're happy enough to get a point that day against Doris in Drina, so it's going to be hard going over there. It's a long time since we went over to play. Well, we played Ballyhob there in the league last year, but it's a long time since we played Doris away in the league game. Looking forward to it. We've had 2 Sundays not playing, which is a bit of a disadvantage. And Doris have played in those 2 Sundays, but that's just the way it is at times. We'll go over and give it our best. Expecting a tough game from Doris. As I said earlier, they've 10 points got already, so nothing will be easy. Looking forward to it, and we'll see how we get on. As I say, now looking forward to getting back playing again.
Yeah, that should be a cracker. And down into the O'Brien Water Services Championship Division for next Sunday, the 27th of October, Drina Rangers B take on Castleac at 11 o'clock. Skibbereen welcome Kilbrittain Rovers to the Baltimore Road, also at 11 o'clock. Spartak Musgrove take on Baltimore, also at 11 o'clock. And then we've 2:30pm kickoffs. Ulta Celtic at home to Castletown Celtic, and Salan hosting Mizzen AFC in Ballivurny at 2:30. Any games jump out at you there, Don, that you think will be a cracker?
First of all, Mizzen have a long journey. It's to Salan, and they're both going well. So that's going to be a good game. And then the other one, of course, Spartak and Baltimore. Baltimore seem to be picking up lately, and can anybody stop Spartak scoring all those goals that they got last week? So we'll see. Spartak and Baltimore is probably the big game of that in that division, I suppose.
Yeah, it looks like it, and I would imagine we'll have plenty more goals to talk about in next week's edition. The way things have been going with that league, it's just goals after goals, weekend after weekend. Finally, delighted to say that the Lake House Beauty Rooms Women's Sevens League, West Cork Women's Seven League, gets underway this weekend, coming as well, also on Sunday the 27th, and 8 teams involved this year, which is fantastic to see. In the Dunmanway... Sorry, go on, yeah? No, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's great that we're delighted that as a West Cork League committee that the Ladies League has started again, and that we've increased our number of teams this year, so it's brilliant. Eamon Hanley, our fixture secretary, has put a huge amount of work into getting that Sevens League going last year, and it was really successful last year. So I see now that there's new teams in this year. The Dunmanway are back in. Ulster are in with a team this year. Drina have a second team, so it's great. It's up from 6 teams last year to 8 this year, so that's excellent.
Yeah, and as you said, hugely encouraging when you see that there's 8 teams and that there seems to be progression year on year. And big thank you also to Lake House Beauty Rooms for sponsoring 4 games down for decision on the opening weekend. Dunmanway Town Women's will take on Drina at 2 o'clock. Ulta Celtic will take on Drina AFC's other team at 3:15. And down in the Bantry Astro, 2 o'clock, Bantry Bay Rovers will take on Barry United AFC, and Beara's their other team will host the defending League and Cup champions Enter Kinmare at 3:15, also down in Bantry Astro, and we wish everybody involved in that all the best for the coming season. We'll be covering that here on the podcast, as getting in the goal scorers and the fixtures and having a look at the league table, treating it just the same as all the other leagues as the weeks progress. Before we finish up, just a reminder that if you like what you're listening to and you're enjoying the podcast, and thanks for all the positive feedback we've received so far, you can find us on youtube.com and search for West Cork League. When you find the West Cork League podcast, simply hit the subscribe button, and then any new edition, whenever it goes live, will appear on your feed. If you're interested in the West Cork League and you're a fan of the West Cork League, the Echo every Wednesday and the Southern Star every Thursday have a match report and roundup. There's also a preview in the Friday edition of the Echo of all the upcoming weekend's matches. Every day you can find all the latest information, scores and league tables on westcorkleague.com. And the West Cork League are also very active on social media on facebook.com/West Cork League and also on Twitter at West Cork League. All that's left for me to do this week is to say big thanks to Drina Rangers co-manager Sean Connery himself, Don Hurley. Don, thanks very much for your time, and hopefully we'll have you back on again before the season is out.
Thanks, Ger.
No problem. Listen, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back again next week. Talk to you soon.